Here with our midweek analysis, and any day you get a chance to talk to Andre Hart as a media member around Colorado football is a good day. In my 20 years covering this program, he's on a very short list of best interviews, and he gives you honest answers, and we got some insight into the linebacker rotation. He mentioned that Demoy Kennedy has been practicing at times as a starter this week and is expected to have a role. So you've really got 5 guys at linebacker that you wouldn't be surprised if they get heavy rotation reps in a game.
Yeah, and it's been an interesting group because, you'll see, Juju Mitchell come in and have 15 tackles, and you're like, okay, they've got some here at linebacker, and then you go to ASU, he doesn't play at all, and Levante Bentley loses his starting job, and then he goes down to ASU, starts, and has a really good game. And so, it's an interesting group there at linebacker, and Demoy is one of those guys that I don't know about you, but I projected him as a starter coming into the year because Andre Hart and Charles Kelly talk so much about him and his speed and what an asset that could be, but he hasn't been on the field at all this year on the defense, so maybe a couple snaps here and there. So, but Andre Hart said that there's some packages now that he's starting to feel much healthier with that knee. His eyes look good, and that there's some packages where he can really get in there and make a difference. And so this team just keeps adding more playmakers, it seems like, potential playmakers each week.
Yeah, with Demoy Kennedy, the way that Coach Hart framed it sounds kind of similar to what the offense has been doing with Alton McCaskill, right? Of being very cautious with the situation coming back from a torn ACL and not pushing that too fast. And Vonta Bentley talked to us today, and I have a lot of respect for somebody that comes in and expects to be the starter. They bring in Juju Mitchell late in the game, and he gets a lot of run, and a lot of guys would have gotten really discouraged. Vonta Bentley said, I prayed on it a lot, and he got his opportunity last Saturday down in Tempe and didn't have a perfect game, but he had a pretty solid performance, had a sack in there and quite a few impactful tackles. So just the way he's approached this is very admirable.
Yeah, and that's a tough situation for a guy like that came from Clemson because he wasn't a starter, thought he could be a starter here, and he was opening day, didn't start for 4 games, and like you said, to his credit, didn't put his head down and came out, and I thought had his best game of the season so far. And you're right, it wasn't perfect, but 11 tackles, a couple tackles for loss, he had a pass breakup. He played really well, and I think if you can get that Levante Bentley most of the time, that's pretty good. And then another guy, Brendan Gant, he's sort of like Alton McCaskill and Demoy Kennedy. It feels like they were bringing him along slowly as well, coming back from injury. He got in there last week and made a few impactful plays as well.
Yeah, Brendan Gant's athleticism out there as a converted safety net that's playing linebacker is a valuable tool to have on a defense now. And then Marvin Ham, he doesn't, I don't think, play at all in the first half against ASU, and comes in and has 3 tackles, and all of them were very impactful tackles down the stretch. Again, a guy that stayed ready, and that's what Coach Hart said, is that he doesn't want his guys getting comfortable, and the way he coaches and rotates that group is pretty obvious. It seems like a good strategy. He said, you want competition, not cancer, and if guys never play, then they can become cancers. If Bentley never got another rep in there, I'm not saying he's a type of guy that would want to be a cancer, but you're going to be disappointed. But if those guys have to stay ready and they do get their reps, it seems like a healthy situation. And Jeremiah Brown now sounds like he's more at the edge.
Yeah, the other thing with that rotation is that it also speaks to the fact that they just totally haven't found the right guys yet, because Coach Hart said, I wouldn't be changing guys if they're playing really well. And he kind of made the analogy, he goes, I'm not going to get my oil change if I don't need an oil change. I'm not going to waste that money. They're making changes because they're trying to find guys that will step up. And maybe they're seeing, he didn't say this, but maybe there's some complacency at times where it's like, all right, let's challenge him. Levante, you've been a starter for a little while. You see a little drop off. Let's get Juju Mitchell in there. And so it's things like that. And so if that group can stay fresh and stay and feel like competition day in and day out, then that's going to help them.
Well, you made the point after the Arizona State game that in past you had who you had as starters, and you really didn't have an option but to continue to roll with those guys, even if they struggled, whereas this team has so much more depth. I think part of it is those 5 guys right now that you look at linebacker with Demoy Kennedy expected to have a bigger role. There's not a whole lot separating them. Now, they all have their strengths, and they have things that they need to improve on, but you put a gun to my head, I don't know who I'd pick as my 2 starters the rest of the season. I would probably say Juju Mitchell has played the most aggressive style of defense of that group.
Yeah, and I would probably put Levante Bentley second on that list, but then you like the athleticism of a Brendan Gant. Marvin Ham's played well at times, and then Demoy Kennedy. They've talked about his speed so much that we haven't seen it yet. But is that an asset that you want on the field? So projecting who the starters are going to be at that position week to week, we don't know, because it's kind of depending on what Coach Hart sees every week.
It was a little confusing on Saturday. They had Juju Mitchell listed on the participation report as having played and as an edge on that initial series, but I think that was Arden Walker that maybe they confused 53 with 51. So it doesn't sound like he did play in that game, which was surprising. Now, was that anything to do with the fact that he was dismissed from ASU's team, in your opinion? Because, it did seem strange that he didn't play at all.
Yeah, I don't think so. They did bring him on the trip, and he was there. I just think, just listening to Coach Hart, it was really just kind of Coach's decision, because Brendan Gant played better in practice leading up to it, and he mentioned that Brendan Gant got in there and was continuing to play well, so he stuck with him. But really, when they went to somebody different, Brendan Gant got injured in that game. He got a little banged up, and they went to Marvin Ham, not Juju Mitchell. And so, who knows? Maybe it could have been something with that. But clearly, there was something that Juju Mitchell was not doing well last week that prevented him from being on the field. That maybe that's something that sparks him this week to have a better week.
And it's going to be a challenge for those guys. Stanford's offense is far from a juggernaut. It's not an offense that's going to keep a defensive coordinator up at night, but they like to run their quarterbacks, and that puts a lot of pressure on your front to play disciplined football, because otherwise that could be a factor that could keep Stanford in this game if you don't do a good job of containing those two quarterbacks that they like rotating.
Yeah, no question. The linebackers are huge in this game. I think that whatever combination Coach Hart comes up with, you might want to use all five at some point during this game, but I think whatever he comes up with is going to be pretty impactful in the outcome of this game.
All right, we teased the Stanford game. We'll be back tomorrow with a preview of Colorado's next home game.